يملكها من يملكها أغنى أهليها سادتها الفقراء. دنيا 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 العاقل عاقل عاقل العاقل عاقل العاقل عاقل عاقل من لم يأخذ ما تعطيه على استحياء الغافل غافل.
The impact of religion and Sufism on arts in Sudan. The influence on modern poetry. محمد مفتاح الفيتوري 1936-2015. The Poet of Africa and Arabism. Part 2. The audience will come to our second encounter with the roving dervish, Al-Fituri. Today we continue our journey with him through his life and glimpses a part of his enduring legacy. Our journey with him has taken us from Al-Jinena, his birthplace in Western Sudan, to Alexandria in Egypt, to Benghazi in Libya, to Cairo, back to Sudan, to Beirut, and finally to Rabat, Morocco, his lasting resting place. So our encounter with him, by the way, as I told, is a continuation for our documentaries that have been dedicated and provided to highlight and to introduce the impact of religion and Sufism on modern Sudanese poetry. And since we have started our first meeting with this renowned poet, here we have our second encounter with him in part 2. But before going to have his second contribution in this domain, just here I would like to add more points about his connection to Sufism, putting in consideration that in our first encounter we listened to him while describing his connection and tie with Sufism, for he had mentioned that he had grown up in a family that its father is a Sufi Sheikh, in Shazaliya Sufi order. So in this second part, he would like, as I told, to add more points about his relation to Sufism. In a remarkable interview with the prominent journalist Kamal Hassan Bakhit, published in Al-Quds newspaper in 2003, Al-Fituri speaks about the influence of Sufi chants on his mind and heart, and said, "From the moment consciousness began to stir within my soul, and I started to grasp the meaning of some of the words my father would repeat at night with his visitors, supplications, litanies, and religious chants, I became attached to what I heard. I began to think deeply to the extent that I abandoned playing with my peers as a child so that I could join my father's companions in the courtyard, listening with delight to the verses of the Quran, Sufi hymns, litanies, and religious stories." So this is his view. And as you listen, as I told, this has been taken place in Sudan during an interview with the renowned Sudanese journalist Kamal Hassan Bakhit. So he once again restated his connection with Sufism, and that has taken place, as I told, while he was so very young. During his childhood, he used to witness the coming of murids and followers of the Sufi path gathered at his father's house so as to celebrate, to engage in dhikr. As he had stated, he abandoned playing with his peers and preferred to spend the time of those Sufis, listening to their music, listening to their chants, and as well as listening to their reading to the Holy Quran and Sufi hymns. So all of this, by the way, constituted and has helped a lot in upbringing of a Sufi poet. Following these short notes about our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri and his connection to Sufism, then the audience, we go on to have our second encounter with him, having another example in which Sufism is so very clear. And I would like to assure the audience that the nature of upbringing of our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri had played great role in the way that he composed an entire and pure odes that is speaking directly with the language of Sufis. And we encounter him in our first part in the lyric of a roving dervish معزوفة لدرويش متجول, how he expressed that language and that lives of the Sufis. So today we continue and we have another example in which the direct influence of Tasawwuf at the culture, at the science, at the way of life is so very clear in his second poem, A World Not Owned by Its Owners. دنيا لا يملكها من يملكها. So we can sense and experience the Sufism of our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri in his masterpiece. A world not owned by its owners, in which he engaged in a dialogue with Yaqut al-Arsh. And Yaqut al-Arsh, by the way, is one of the great ascetics and Sufis who truly know God. And as a matter of fact, in Sufism, such a figure known as Al-Arif Billah, the Gnostic, the knower by God. So he is among those elite, among those group of dervishes. He was the most eminent prominent. He was most. Yaqut al-Arsh was the most eminent companion of the renowned Sheikh Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi in Egypt, more specifically in Alexandria, and became his successor after him. So from this noted figure, I'm referring here to Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi, his student Ibn Atullah al-Sakandari emerged as one of the greatest Sufis, with a special reference to his authoring Al-Hikam al-Ata'iyya. So what I would like to say is that in our second encounter with Al-Fituri, we would like to experience him in a dialogue with Yaqut al-Arsh. And as I told, Yaqut al-Arsh is a great ascetic and Sufi student in the Shazaliya Sufi order. And he is one of the prominent companion of the renowned Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi, as I told. The audience, I would like to reminding you that I'm presenting Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri in our second encounter with him. So as I told shortly, here we have his second contribution in the area of Sufism, and we would like first of all to quote and to share part of the lines in Arabic and then going to have its English translation. دنيا لا يملكها من يملكها، أغنى أهليها سادتها الفقراء، الخاسر من لم يأخذ منها ما تعطيه على استحياء، والغافل من ظن الأشياء هي الأشياء. تاج السلطان الغاشم تفاحة، تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساحة، تاج الصوفي يضيء على سجادة قش. صدقني يا ياغوت العرش أن الموت ليس هم هاتيك الموتى، والراحة ليست هاتيك الراحة. So this is just line, the first stanza of the poem, and going directly the audience to the English translation version of the Oud. Let us go.
قد يعلونا يا يعقوب، عدنا ما فينا قد يعلونا يا يعقوب، فكن العدل تكن الأعلى فينا، عدنا ما فينا قد يعلونا يا يعقوب، عدنا ما فينا قد يعلونا
So about the translated version of this masterpiece of our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri, I would like to tell that the poem has been translated by the translator, the author, Dr. Adil Babikir, as part of his book Modern Sudanese Poetry, an anthology, published by Nebraska University, 2019. Let us go. A world not owned by its owners, its richest are its masters, the poor. The loser is the one who does not take what it shyly gives. The senseless are those who take things at their face value. The crown of a tyrant sultan is an apple dangling from the plaza flagpole. The crown of a Sufi on a straw mat gleams. Believe me, O Yaqut al-Arsh, the dead are not those dead, nor happiness is that one. Which he says of the world are you asking about, dearest? About what with the feet cast the rock, an eyes of condom? About clouds made of fire, islands of corals, about the dead man carrying his own corpse, running to his death place? Don't be surprised, O Yaqut. More significant than a man's destiny is man himself. The judge curling his mustache, fluttering with the singer. The village's wise man is hanged, and the monkey ramping in the marketplace. Dearest, copper is as precious as gold in the eyes of the destitute. Your judge, to tie to his stolen seat, issuing verdicts and swaggering across the cemetery. Only through our own eyes can you see us. You can't recognize us unless we draw you in close enough and we open up our lowest in rank Oyakut may well ascend top the top. So choose the rock bottom to get to the highest point. The sea water has dried up. The bird troops called off their journey. The barefooted safe is on your shoulders. Mountains of grief in your eyes. Don't cry, dearest. We both have had enough. The grand grief is too good for words.
يملكها أغنى أهلها سادتها الفقراء. الخاسر من لم يأخذ منها ما تعطيه على استحياء، والغافل من ظن الأشياء هي الأشياء. تاج السلطان القاتم تفاحة تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساحة. تاج الصوفي يضيء على سجادة قش. صدقني يا ياقوت العرش أن الموتى ليسوا هم هاتيك الموتى، والراحة ليست هاتيك الراحة. عن أي بحار العالم تسألني يا محبوبي؟ عن أي بحار العالم؟ عن حوت قدماه من صخر، عيناه من ياقوت، عن سحب من نيران وجزائر من مرجان، عن ميت يحمل جثته ويهرول حيث يموت. لا تعجب يا ياقوت، الأعظم من قدر الإنسان هو الإنسان. القاضي يغزل شاربه لمغنية الحانة، وحكيم القرية مشنوب، والقردة تلهو في السوق. يا محبوبي ذهب المضطر نحاس، ذهب المضطر نحاس. قاضيكم مشدود في مقعده المسروق، يقضي ما بين الناس ويجر عباءته كبرا في الجبانة. لن تبصرنا ما لم نجذبك فتعرفنا وتكاشفنا. أدنى ما فينا قد يعلونا يا ياقوت، فكن الأدنى تكن الأعلى فينا.
So the audience share reading the translated version of our episodes out, being composed by our celebrated poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri, while it has been translated by Dr. Adil Babikir. Following our presentation, the audience, to our noted poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri, and more specifically our first encounter with him, mainly experiencing his lyric of a roving dervish, معزوفة لدرويش متجول, and then our encounter with him today with his noted and celebrated masterpiece دنيا لا يملكها من يملكها. Here what I would like to tell is that we are experiencing a pure Sufi poet, unlike those figures that already we encounter in our previous episodes from his peers of the Sudanese modern poets. For our experience with them show that they have been influenced and impacted in their production, poetic production, by Sufi language, by religion language, while our figure today, as well as in the previous or in the first part of our introducing him, we are experienced, as I told, and living with the Sufi poet. So just here, I would like sharing part of the thematic meaning, the central ideas in which our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri tries to share to explore, and at the same time to transmit to his audience. Let us go starting with the thematic meaning. On not by its owners. Its richest are its masters, the poor. The loser is the one who does not take what it shyly gives. The senseless are those who take things at their face value. The crown of a tyrant sultan is an apple dangling from the plaza flagpole. The crown of a Sufi on a straw mat gleams. Believe me, O Yaqut al-Arsh, the dead are not those dead, nor happiness is that one. What he sees of the world are you asking about, dearest? The poet opens the ode by saying, a world owned not by its owners. This phrase expresses the idea that worldly possession is illusory. How can an individual possess it when he is mortal? And how can a mortal claim ownership of what does not belong to him? In reality, he does not own the world, for he is a created being, and the world itself is the created being. When the poet says its richest are its masters, the poor, the poem reverses worldly values. Those who appear rich, kings, rulers, are spiritually impoverished. Those who are materially poor but spiritually awake, like the Sufis, are the true masters of life. This is a classical Sufi inversion. Outer poverty, inner richness. The poet in the poem calls the loser the one who fails to receive what life quietly offers. Life gives wisdom, gives insight, and gives spiritual opportunity. But this must be taken with sensitivity. Shyly gives. Most people miss these gifts because they seek only obvious and material benefits. And the poet continues in the ode and said, the senseless are those who take things at their face value. And by the way, this line criticizes superficial perception. Sufi thought insist that reality has layers. Surface forms are veils. Those who see only the literal thingsness of things are spiritually blind. And listen to him saying, تاج السلطان الغاشم تفاحة تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساحة. تاج الصوفي يضيء على سجادة قش. The tyrant's crown becomes an apple dangling from a flagpole, a symbol of how empty an absurd worldly power is. What looks like majesty is actually fragile, temporary, and lovable. While the true light of the Sufi, by contrast, the crown of the Sufi gleams on a straw mat, and this indicates spiritual radiance arises in humility, in simplicity, in inner purity, as well as in the sincerity, not in palaces, nor luxury, buildings, cars, so on and so forth. This contrast underscores the poem Moral Universe. While saying إن الموتى ليس هم هاتيك الموتى والراحة ليست هاتيك الراحة. The poet says, the dead are not those dead, nor happiness is that one. What the central idea, or what is the semantic meaning of this line? In fact, the true death is a spiritual extinction, not physical death. True happiness is not material comfort, but inner illumination. Again, the poem challenges superficial definitions of the deepest human realities. And by the way, here, as if we are experienced with the poet, the concept of death, who's actually is dead. And Sufis believe that not only Sufis, but the Islamic teaching informs that the one who always engaging in dhikr, engaging with values, in observing the etiquette of the religion is the living one, while that one who goes blind, goes in heedlessness, is actually the dead one. So as you see here, we have the varied conception of the meaning of the nature of death itself. To him in the second stanza. لا تعجب يا ياقوت الأعظم إن قدر الإنسان هو الإنسان القاضي يغزل شاربه لمغنية الحانة. The poet saying more significant than a man's destiny is a man himself. A notion affirms a core humanistic and Sufi idea. Human potential, consciousness, and inner worth are greater than whatever circumstances or fate impose. Man is not defined by the accident of life, poverty, injustice, oppression, but by the depth of his spirit. The lines الغادي يغزل شاربه لمغنية الحانة وحكيم القرية مشنوق والقردة تلهو في السوق. These lines paint a picture of a society where moral order has collapsed. The judge curls his mustache and flirts with the singer, a symbol of corruption, silliness, and abuse of authority. While the wise man of the village is hanged, a symbol of truth being punished. Monkeys ramping in the marketplace is a metaphor for chaos, stupidity, and misrule. The imagery shows a world where the unworthy rule and the unworthy suffer. The judge, moreover, empathizes. Your judge, tied to his stolen seat, exposes the illegitimacy of power. He issues edicts not out of justice, but from a position acquired dishonestly. His swaggering in the cemetery suggests arrogance, blindness to death, and moral decay. This symbolizes a justice system that is rotten, performative, and stripped of any true righteousness. While for the lion, copper is as precious as gold in the eyes of the destitute, underscores how deprivation reshapes perception. When scarcity dominates, even the cheap and worthless appear valuable. And this line also can be read both literally, material poverty, and spiritual poverty of ethics, intellect, or vision. The audience, as we have started our encounter with Al-Fituri in our second meeting with him in part 2, we continue and we reach to this point in which, as we have stated, he was in a dialogue with Yaqut al-Arsh. So Al-Fituri, in his dialogue with Yaqut al-Arsh, their dialogue continues while saying, لن تبصرنا بمآخ غير مآخينا، لن تعرفنا ما لم نجذبك فتعرفنا وتكاشفنا. أدنى ما فينا قد يعلونا يا ياقوت، أدنى ما فينا قد يعلونا يا ياقوت، فكون الأدنى تكون الأعلى فينا، فكون الأدنى تكون الأعلى فينا. As you listen, so very clear Sufi language, that is the concept of attraction, al-jazb, and then unveiling, al-kashf, pure English Sufi terms. So the lines insist that one cannot perceive certain human truths using ordinary sight or the external senses. Only through our own eyes can you see us. And as I understood it, it is there in the initiation into the Sufi path. That is, Islam itself consists of 3 ranks. That is Islam, Iman, Ihsan. That is Sharia, Tariqa, and Haqiqa. So the dialogue here, in fact, it is not an ordinary dialogue. It is a dialogue that expresses spirituality, speaking about the insight. And this line, by the way, take us to the notion of sight and insight, and how the difference between the two is so there. So the poem says, you cannot recognize us unless we draw you in and open up. By the way, this is, as I told, this in Sufism called attraction, a jazb. Then attraction itself is the blessing, by the way. And I have come across commentaries on Shah Matib al-Bashir, the book of aphorism. He stated in one of his aphorisms that the attraction is consists of many types. One of these, the first one of attraction, is attraction from the fold of unbelieving to the fold of believing. And then the second attraction is to be attracted, to be drawn into the Sufi path. So this reflects a simple Sufi principle, that is, spiritual truth is not realized by force, by intellect, or by observation. It is granted through initiation into the Sufi path. It is granted through intimacy, through humility, and through inner readiness. For the heart must be invited first of all. Knowledge here is a gift, not a conquest. While the lion, our lowest in rank, may ascend to the top. This line, by the way, emphasizes another mystical theme, that is, outer status means nothing. Inner worth is everything. Those who appear insignificant may be the most spiritually elevated, and those who seem ordinary may carry hidden light. So the lower may be the highest, and this is, by the way, indicate the humble may surpass the proud. And then rank, title, and appearance have no meaning in the spiritual world. This reflects, by the way, the Sufi idea that God elevates those whom society ignores and neglects.
صدقني يا قوت العرش تاج السلطان الغاشم تفاح تاج السلطان الغاشم تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساق تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساق تاج الصوفي تاج من قش صدقني يا قوت العرش تاج الصوفي تاج من قش صدقني يا قوت العرش تاج السلطان الغاشم تفاح تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساق تتأرجح أعلى سارية الساق
And then the audience here, just we reach to the final destination. We experience through two encounters with our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri. Experience him openly and so clearly, talking Sufis. In the first encounter, we experiencing him in a lyric for a roving dervish. And then today we experiencing moreover in دنيا لا يملكها من يملكها. So these two examples, by the way, stand as a witness to what extent that our poet Muhammad Miftah Al-Fituri has been influenced by the language of Tasawwuf. While, as I told before, that a merit is not strange for him, for his upbringing in a family that its father is the Sufi Sheikh in the Shazaliya is quite sufficient enough to live the life of a Sufi, to engage in their language, to immerse in their culture, as he personally told in more than one interview that he reads the great Sufis, Hallaj, Junaid, Al-Farid, all of these figures, while he stated in another episode, in another interview, that what influenced him greatly and taken him into the world and the realm of Sufism is his upbringing. For his father, as we have told, is a Sufi, and since he is a Sufi Sheikh, then the gatherings of the Murid in his home is another source from which he emerged as outspoken to the language of Tasawwuf. By this I came to the end of the episode. Till seeing you in another episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.